I sat at the family dinner table with my hands trembling beneath the white tablecloth. I had practiced this announcement in front of my bathroom mirror at least 50 times. Taking a deep breath, I finally spoke up. I told everyone about my new business. A branding consultancy. It was small, just me working from my apartment with a laptop and a dream, but it was mine. My father Malcolm stopped cutting his steak mid-slice. He looked at me like I had just announced I was joining the circus. His fork clattered against his plate. The entire dining room went silent. My younger brother stopped scrolling on his phone. My Aunt Kelly froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Then Malcolm smirked. That cold, dismissive smirk I had seen my whole life. "That little company of yours won't last 6 months," he said. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. The table erupted in laughter. My mother looked down at her napkin. My brother grinned. Aunt Kelly covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook with laughter. Malcolm leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Real men don't play entrepreneur, Oliver. They build actual careers." My face burned with shame. I left early that night. But the next morning, an email arrived that changed everything. The email came from a construction supplier I had contacted weeks earlier. They wanted to meet about rebranding their company. It was not glamorous work, but it was real. My first genuine contract. I showed up at their office wearing my only suit, carrying a portfolio I had assembled the night before. I was nervous but prepared. I pitched my ideas, displayed mock-ups on my laptop, and explained how strong branding could transform their business image. The owner, a man named Frank, seemed impressed. We shook hands. I signed the contract that same afternoon. My hands were shaking as I wrote my signature. I was thrilled beyond words. This was proof. Real proof that I could actually do this. Proof that Malcolm was wrong about me. Then, during our second planning meeting the following week, Frank mentioned something casually while reviewing timelines. "We're hoping to win a major national contract soon," he said, adjusting his reading glasses. "With the Hayes Group." My stomach dropped like I had just stepped off a cliff. Hayes Group. That was my father's company. Malcolm had built Hayes Group from nothing into one of the largest construction firms in the entire region. I realized something terrifying. My father was not just mocking me anymore. He was unknowingly competing with me. And he had absolutely no idea I was working on the other side. I worked every single night for the next 3 weeks. My small apartment transformed into a complete workspace. Sketches covered every surface. Color palettes were taped to my walls. Font samples littered my kitchen table. I barely slept. I perfected every tiny detail of the branding. I studied their company history, analyzed their competitors, researched their target market. I poured everything I had learned in design school into this project. Frank loved everything I presented. During one meeting, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "You're sharper than most of the big agencies we've worked with over the years," he told me. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuine hope rising in my chest. Real hope. I was actually good at this work. I could build something meaningful. Then my phone rang one evening while I was organizing files. It was Malcolm. I had not spoken to him since the disastrous family dinner. "Still pretending, are we?" His voice dripped with condescension. No hello. No greeting. Just the immediate insult. I wanted desperately to tell him about the contract, about Frank's company, about how completely wrong he was. But I did not. I simply said I was busy working and hung up quickly. I sat there staring at my designs spread across my desk. Malcolm's cruel voice echoed in my head, but I absolutely refused to let it stop me from moving forward. A week later, my mother called me. Her voice sounded soft and apologetic, which made me suspicious immediately. She asked how I was doing. We talked about small things for several minutes before she finally admitted the real reason for her call. "Your father has been telling relatives you're unemployed," she said quietly, almost whispering into the phone. I felt physically sick. Not surprised exactly, but deeply sick. He was not just dismissing my work anymore. He was actively erasing it. Rewriting my entire life into a joke he could tell at family gatherings to get laughs. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Because I thought you deserved to know what he's been saying. She paused for a long moment. He told your Uncle Paul last weekend that you would come crawling back begging for a job soon. I thanked her and hung up the phone. I sat in complete silence, feeling anger and hurt mixing together into something sharper. Something more focused than before. That weekend, I attended a family barbecue. I overheard Malcolm talking to my cousin near the garage. He was laughing loudly. He'll come crawling back, Malcolm said with absolute certainty. Give it a few months and he'll be begging. I stood hidden around the corner, listening to every word. And I made a decision right there. I would never crawl back. Not ever. The following month brought an unexpected surprise. A mid-sized supplier reached out through my website. They wanted me to rebrand their entire operation from top to bottom. New logo, new color scheme, new complete identity. The contract was worth more money than I had ever seen in my entire life. My hands actually shook as I signed the paperwork. During our first kick-off meeting in their conference room, the project manager explained their ambitious goals. We're positioning ourselves strategically to win a major national contract, she explained, clicking through a presentation. That sounds really exciting, I said, taking notes carefully. Who is the contract with exactly? Hayes Group. We're one of several potential partners they're considering for a huge redevelopment project downtown. My heart started pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Hayes Group. Again. Malcolm's company. My work was going to end up directly in my father's world, whether I wanted it there or not. I could have walked away right then. I could have told them about the family connection and the conflict of interest. But something deep inside me absolutely refused to quit. If my work was good enough to land in Malcolm's hands, then let it happen. Let him see exactly what I could accomplish. I delivered my best work. Brilliance. My logo appeared on their uniforms, their delivery vans, their official documents. My name was not publicly attached to any of it. But my creative fingerprint was absolutely everywhere. I visited the supplier's main warehouse several weeks later to check on the implementation progress. New signage was being installed across the building. My design. My logo. Clean, bold, and undeniably professional. It looked absolutely perfect against the industrial brick walls. The operations manager walked over with a huge smile on his face. This is fantastic work, Oliver. We're rolling this design out across all 15 of our locations statewide. I'm really glad you're happy with everything, I said, trying desperately to keep my voice steady and professional. He gestured toward a tall stack of branded documents sitting on a nearby table. These are going out to all our business partners next week. Including Hayes Group, of course. Every single document we send them will have your design prominently displayed on it. My stomach did a complete flip. Malcolm was going to see this work very soon. He was going to see my design, my creativity, my professional skill, and he would not even know it came from me. I thanked the manager politely and left the warehouse. On the drive home, I felt a strange mixture of pride and complete dread churning in my chest. My work was about to walk straight into my father's corporate office. I just had to wait patiently and see what would happen next. At my cousin's birthday party 3 weeks later, Malcolm cornered me near the drinks table on the back patio. I had been actively avoiding him all evening, but he found me anyway. He always did. So, how's the little hobby business going? He asked loudly enough for several nearby relatives to hear clearly. I stayed calm, forcing my voice to remain level. It's going well, actually. He laughed that harsh, dismissive laugh. I've just landed the biggest contract of my entire career. Something you would never understand, obviously. I froze completely. He started describing the redevelopment project in detail. The timeline. The partners involved. The massive scope of the work. Everything. Every single thing he described sounded familiar. Too familiar. Impossibly familiar. The supplier I had just finished rebranding. The national contract they had mentioned excitedly. It was all the exact same project Malcolm was describing. Malcolm kept talking confidently, completely oblivious to the truth. He had absolutely no idea I was already deeply involved in this deal. No idea whatsoever that my work was about to enter his professional world. I nodded politely, said congratulations, and walked away before my face could betray what I was thinking. My heart raced wildly. This was so much bigger than I had initially realized. And it was about to become very, very real. The official announcement came on a Tuesday morning. I was drinking coffee when I saw the local newspaper headline. Hayes Group wins prestigious downtown redevelopment contract. Malcolm's photograph appeared prominently, showing him shaking hands with smiling city officials. I read through the entire article carefully, studying every detail. Then I found the partner list buried in the third paragraph. There it was, listed clearly. The supplier I had branded. They were named as a key strategic partner. I sat back heavily in my kitchen chair, staring at my laptop screen. My work was definitely about to enter Malcolm's hands now. Every document they sent him would carry my design prominently. Every invoice, every report, every proposal. And he still had absolutely no idea. Part of me wanted desperately to call him immediately. To say directly, that logo you're about to see everywhere? That's mine. I created that. But I did not call. I waited instead. Because I knew the moment would eventually come when he would see it himself. When he would recognize the professional quality and wonder who had created it. I just needed to be patient. All the pieces were slowly moving into exact position. I just needed to let them fall naturally into place. I returned to the supplier's warehouse to observe the final rollout of all branding materials. Everything looked absolutely perfect. New uniforms on all the workers. New signage covering the buildings. New branded vehicles lined up neatly in the massive parking lot. Frank walked over, practically beaming with pride. This will be on every single document we send to Hayes Group, he said enthusiastically. Every invoice, every safety report, every proposal we submit. I forced a smile onto my face. That's really great to hear. They are going to see this professional branding and immediately know we're serious, he continued excitedly. Professional. Legitimate. Ready for the big leagues. My stomach flipped again with that now familiar feeling of anxiety. Malcolm was going to see it very soon. Maybe he had already seen it. Maybe right now he was looking at documents with my logo printed across the top. I thanked Frank genuinely and left the warehouse. On the long drive home, I could not stop thinking about it obsessively. What would Malcolm say when he finally noticed? Would he even care at all? Or would he just dismiss it like he dismissed everything else I did? I honestly did not know the answer. But I knew I would find out soon enough. Sunday lunch at my parents' house arrived. I almost cancelled, but my mother had insisted repeatedly that I come. The dining table was set perfectly. The usual family faces gathered around, making small talk. Malcolm sat at the head of the table as always, talking loudly about his new partnership. He was boasting in his typical way. Describing important meetings, complex contracts, impressive logistics. Then he paused mid-sentence. His expression shifted slightly, becoming thoughtful. Their branding is surprisingly professional, he muttered, almost talking to himself. My fork stopped moving halfway to my mouth. Whoever designed it clearly knows what they're doing, he added. He actually sounded impressed. Almost respectful, which was rare for Malcolm. I said absolutely nothing. I just kept eating mechanically, my heart pounding so hard in my chest, I thought it might explode. My mother glanced at me across the table. I saw something shift noticeably in her eyes. She knew the truth. She had always known I was working seriously. And now she was starting to piece everything together in her mind. But Malcolm kept talking casually, completely oblivious to reality. He had no idea whatsoever that the person responsible for that impressive branding was sitting directly across from him. I stayed completely quiet. This was definitely not the right moment yet. Not yet. 2 days later, I received an unexpected email from Frank. They wanted me to attend the first official joint contract meeting with Hayes Group. I stared at the email for several long minutes, my pulse racing uncontrollably. Attend the meeting. With Malcolm. In the same corporate boardroom. I hesitated seriously. I was just a consultant, right? Did I really need to be physically present there? Then Frank called my phone directly. Oliver, you're part of this team now. We want you in that room. Your work is literally the face of our entire company. You should absolutely be there when we present everything. I agreed reluctantly. I honestly do not know why I said yes. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something else I could not quite name. But the exact moment I hung up the phone, I regretted my decision completely. Walking into a professional boardroom with Malcolm, representing his partner company, felt absolutely insane. I tried to back out twice before the scheduled meeting. But each time, Frank insisted firmly that I needed to be there. So I prepared myself mentally. I rehearsed exactly what I would say. I carefully planned how I would act professionally. And I prayed silently that Malcolm would not make a terrible scene in front of everyone. The day of the meeting finally arrived. I drove to the Hayes Group headquarters building, my hands gripping the steering wheel far too tightly. My palms were sweating. The boardroom was incredibly sleek and intimidating. Glass walls everywhere. Expensive leather chairs. Everything costly and designed to impress. I walked in carefully and immediately saw Malcolm across the long table. He was talking animatedly to someone, gesturing with his hands. He did not notice me at first. Then I sat down in my assigned seat. He glanced over casually. His eyes passed over me, then suddenly snapped back. Recognition flickered clearly across his face. His jaw tightened visibly. His entire posture stiffened. But the meeting started immediately before he could say anything. Introductions went around the table systematically. When it was my turn, I stated my name clearly and my official title. Branding consultant for the supplier. Malcolm's face remained carefully neutral and professional. But I noticed his knuckles turning white as he gripped his expensive pen tightly. The real shock, though, had not hit yet. That would come in just a few minutes. Midway through the meeting, official documents were passed around the table. Proposals, contracts, progress reports, all branded prominently with the logo I had carefully designed. Malcolm picked up the papers in front of him. His eyes scanned the pages quickly and professionally. Then he stopped suddenly. He looked at the logo at the top. Really looked at it carefully. His brow furrowed deeply. He squinted, like he was trying desperately to place something familiar. Then he snapped loudly. "Where did you get that logo?" The entire room went quiet instantly. Frank smiled pleasantly. "Oliver Hayes designed it. Best decision we made all year." Complete silence. Malcolm's jaw clenched visibly. He looked directly at me, then back at the logo, then at me again. His eyes were hard. I said absolutely nothing. I just met his gaze steadily and waited. The meeting continued, but the tension was incredibly thick. Malcolm barely spoke for the rest of the hour. He just stared at the documents repeatedly, his expression completely unreadable. When the meeting finally ended, I gathered my things quickly, hoping desperately to leave before he could corner me alone. I was not fast enough. Malcolm caught me in the hallway outside the boardroom. He grabbed my arm, not hard exactly, but very firm. "Don't get ahead of yourself," he said quietly. "You just got lucky this time." I pulled my arm free from his grip. For the first time in my entire life, I looked him straight in the eye and did not back down. "No, Dad. I got good." His eyes flashed with something dark and angry. Something dangerous crossed his face. He leaned in closer and whispered harshly, "This contract is mine. Don't you dare embarrass me." That was the exact moment I truly realized something important. He still saw me as property. As something he controlled completely. Something that reflected directly on him. Not as a separate person. Not as someone capable and talented. Just an extension of himself. And if I succeeded independently, it threatened his sense of control. I stepped back deliberately. "I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to do my job professionally." He did not respond at all. He just turned sharply and walked away, his footsteps echoing loudly down the marble hallway. I stood there shaking. Not from fear this time. From absolute clarity. A week later, Frank called me. His tone sounded serious and concerned. "I need to tell you something important," he said carefully. "Your father has been pressuring us repeatedly to replace you with a larger, more established agency." My heart sank completely. "What?" "He called me twice already. Said you're too inexperienced. Said we would be much better off with someone more established in the industry." He paused significantly. "I wanted you to know, because I think you should be prepared for what might come next." I thanked him and hung up slowly. I sat in my apartment, staring blankly at the wall. Malcolm was actively trying to push me out now. He was not just mocking me anymore. He was deliberately sabotaging my work. I felt betrayed all over again. But this time, something shifted fundamentally inside me. This was not just personal anymore. This was professional. And if Malcolm wanted to make it a war, I would fight back. But I would do it with excellent work. With undeniable results. With absolute proof that I belonged here. I opened my laptop and got back to work immediately. The next day, Frank called again. This time, his tone was completely different. Excited. Almost conspiratorial. "Oliver, I need to tell you something," he said. "We chose you for a very specific reason." "What do you mean exactly?" "We've worked with Hayes Group before. Your father's company. And honestly, we were tired of his arrogance. The way he talks down to everyone. The way he treats business partners like servants." I did not know what to say. "When we saw your work, we knew you were different. Professional. Respectful. Genuinely talented." He paused. "We want you leading all our branding nationally. Not just this single project. Everything we do." I was completely stunned. I was not being pushed out. I was being pulled up. "We're expanding operations," he continued enthusiastically. "And we want you as our exclusive branding partner for the next 5 years." I thanked him, barely able to form coherent words. After I hung up, I sat there in complete shock. Malcolm had tried to destroy me. And instead, I was rising. A month later, there was a public contract signing event. City officials attended. Business partners. Press photographers. Everyone who mattered in the industry was there. Malcolm stood at the podium, giving an impressive speech. He talked about innovation, partnership, and vision for the future. Then he made a joke. "Some small firms don't last in this industry," he said, smiling at the audience. "But the strong ones always endure." The crowd laughed politely. I stood in the back, watching silently. Then Frank stepped forward unexpectedly. He was not scheduled to speak, but he took the microphone anyway. "Actually," he said, his voice cutting clearly through the room, "our entire identity was built by Oliver Hayes." Malcolm stiffened visibly. The room turned. Eyes found me standing in the back. "Oliver's work completely transformed our company," Frank continued genuinely. "And we're proud to have him as our partner." The applause that followed was genuine. Warm. Real. And Malcolm's face went completely pale. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just stood there calmly, letting the moment settle naturally. After the event, my mother pulled me aside. We stood in the hallway, away from the crowd. "I need to tell you something," she said softly. "Your father has always been afraid of you." I blinked in confusion. "What?" "He knew you were smart. Talented. He was terrified you would surpass him." She looked away. "That's why he crushed you first. He thought if he kept you small, he would stay big." I felt something break inside me. And heal at the same time. All these years. All the insults. The dismissals. The cruelty. It was not because I was worthless. It was because he saw my potential and feared it deeply. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked. "Because I was scared too," she admitted. Scared of what he would do if I stood up to him. I hugged her. We stood there for a long moment. Then I noticed Malcolm standing a few feet away. He had heard part of our conversation. His face was completely unreadable. A week later, Malcolm invited me to his office. It was the first time he had done that in years. I sat across from him, the massive desk between us. He leaned back, hands folded. "I want to offer you a job," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "A job?" "Yes. Here. At Hayes Group. We could use someone with your skills." It sounded generous. But I saw through it. He did not say partnership. He did not say respect. He said job. This was not kindness. It was control. A way to bring me under his authority. To make sure I stayed beneath him. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully. "But I'm building my own business." His face darkened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," I said. "But it's my mistake to make." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he stood. "You'll regret this." I left his office, my hands shaking. But not from fear. From freedom. The Hayes Group Board of Directors started asking questions. They had seen the supplier's branding. They knew Oliver Hayes was behind it. "Why isn't Oliver working with us directly?" One director asked Malcolm during a meeting. Malcolm lied smoothly. "He's unreliable," he said. "Too inexperienced for our standards." But the board was not convinced. They requested a meeting with me directly. Malcolm tried to block it. He told them I was too busy. That I was not interested. But the board went around him. They contacted me directly through my business email. I agreed to meet with them. Malcolm was losing control of the narrative. And I could see the panic in his eyes every time we crossed paths. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. And I knew it would change everything. The board meeting was formal. Serious. I presented my work, explained my process, showed examples of successful projects. The directors were impressed. They asked thoughtful questions. They nodded along as I spoke. Then one director, an older woman with sharp eyes, asked something unexpected. "Is it true Malcolm told family members you were unemployed?" I paused. I had not mentioned that. "How did she know?" "I didn't say that," I said carefully. "We know," she replied. "Someone inside his circle has been talking." I looked around the table. Someone had leaked information. Someone close to Malcolm had betrayed him. The meeting ended shortly after. But I left with a clear sense that things were shifting. Malcolm's grip was slipping. And people were noticing. Whispers spread through Hayes Group. Employees talked. Partners noticed. Malcolm undermines talent. Even his own son. Clients started requesting me directly. They wanted Oliver Hayes, not Hayes Group. Malcolm's temper flared in meetings. His confidence cracked. The powerful, untouchable father I had known my whole life started looking small. Fragile. I did not gloat. I did not spread rumors. I just kept working. But I watched it happen. The reputation he had built for decades began to collapse. And it was not because I destroyed it. It was because he had built it on fear and control. And when people stopped being afraid, the whole structure fell apart. The supplier made a major announcement. They were expanding nationally. And they named my consultancy as their exclusive branding partner. Then came the final blow. Hayes Group was removed from the redevelopment project. The client wanted a more collaborative team. They had heard about Malcolm's behavior. The way he treated people. And they did not want to work with him anymore. Malcolm was furious. I heard he stormed out of a meeting. Slammed doors. Yelled at employees. Then, one afternoon, he showed up at my apartment. He pounded on the door until I opened it. He stood there, breathing hard. His eyes scanned my desk. Papers. Contracts. Designs. Then he saw it. My logo. On the termination letter from the redevelopment project. His face went white. Malcolm did not yell. He did not scream. He just stared at me, his face pale and hollow. "You've taken everything from me," he whispered. I met his eyes. "No, Dad. You handed it away when you decided I was nothing." He flinched. Like I had slapped him. "I didn't destroy you," I continued. "You destroyed yourself. You built everything on making people feel small. And when they stopped shrinking, you had nothing left." He stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. I watched him leave, his shoulders slumped, his steps slow. I closed the door and leaned against it. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. Sad. But also free. This was not over for Malcolm. He would have to rebuild. Figure out who he was without power. But for me, it was a new beginning. Months later, I stood on a stage at an industry awards event. My consultancy had won Emerging Business of the Year. The lights were bright. The crowd was large. I saw my mother in the audience, tears streaming down her face. Malcolm was not there. I accepted the award and stepped up to the microphone. Some people want you small so they feel big, I said, my voice steady. Don't shrink. Don't let anyone convince you that their fear of your potential is proof of your inadequacy. The applause was loud. Genuine. I walked off stage, holding the award. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Your father watched the live stream. He cried. I stared at the message. I did not know what to feel. Anger. Pity. Relief. Maybe all of it. I turned off my phone and walked outside. The night air was cool. Clean. I was not just successful. I was unbreakable. And finally free.